Hello and welcome to SuperConnectivity. I'm your host, Charlie Esser, and with me as always,
Phil Parrish.
There we go. I knew you were there, Phil. Okay, so, big news in the MCU came out this week because we got our Baron Mordo for the new Doctor Strange film opposite our Benedict Cumberbatch. It's and if you thought Benedict Cumberbatch was a mouthful, Baron Mordo is Chiwetel Ejiofor, which I'm probably massacring the pronunciation on this. He was the star of 12 Years a Slave, a fantastic actor, and brilliant casting. Brilliant casting because it came after the announcement of Tilda Swinton. Now, you know, there's all kinds of talk about how well-oiled machine Disney Marvel is and how they really think perfect. And I tell you, I don't know if it's intentional, but I believe it was completely intentional. The Swinton, so that they got out there this idea of a race gender switch from a character with a popular icon, and nobody made a fuss. Okay? Well, except me. I made a fuss last week, but nobody else made a fuss. And now they roll out that Baron Mordo, an African gentleman. I don't know exactly what other nationality he is. And no one can complain about this now because they didn't complain about Tilda Swinton. And it is such a brilliant idea to really expose these people who are going to be complaining about these switches on these characters for being people who just only want to see white men on the screen. Because really, if you're going to complain about Mordo no longer being Transylvanian, you really should have been complaining about Tilda not being, or the ancient one not being Tibetan. You know, now I can complain because I did say I didn't think it was a good idea, and I especially, think that, especially if the moving of not making the ancient one Tibetan was a nod to the Chinese market, that I think it hurts Disney more than it helps them. I mean, yes, they want to be in that Chinese market, but had they less visibly caved on that note, they might have been actually able to have some kind of cachet in the larger world community. But if they were going to do that anyway, then this was brilliant what they did. And I'm not going to complain expressly because it was brilliant. It was Marvel playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. They really just hoisted everyone by their own petards, because you can't complain about this now unless you first complained about Tilda Swinton. And although I have the right to complain, because I did complain about Tilda Swinton, I'm not, because I'm just too darn impressed by this switcheroo they pulled off. So, it's great. I'm very excited. I'm getting really excited about Doctor Strange right now. I mean, honestly, all this casting, these interesting choices, it really has me pumped for that. It's not my Doctor Strange movie that I had envisioned with, Bryan Cranston, and my Mordo was going to be Antonio Banderas. And I was going to have Robert Picardo do a small role as Dr. Druid in there as well before Doctor Strange becomes Doctor Strange. But that's my fantasies, Would have been a great movie. Maybe in 20 years, if they reboot it, I'm going to do that. Although, of course, then I really couldn't do Robert Picardo and Bryan Cranston 20 years from now. Although Antonio Banderas could probably still play Mordo. And why this is important, incidentally, is Mordo is a very important character in the Doctor Strange mythos. And I really hope they do explore this as well as they should. Because Baron Mordo should have been the Sorcerer Supreme. Baron Mordo was a person, and especially if they've expanded his origin throughout the years, and really gotten into who he is. Essentially, he was a guy who was bred from birth to be the Sorcerer Supreme. You know, his parents were mystics, and they had him they did all these blood rituals at his birth to ensure that he would be the most powerful sorcerer ever born. And, they send him to be with the Ancient One, and he is the Ancient One's star pupil because he knows more of magic than any human being on the planet, but he is not, like Dr. Doom, he may be a genius, but he's also a real jerk. No. And the Ancient One knows he can't have a jerk be Sorcerer Supreme. And even though, that's the thing, Doctor Strange may be many things, but at his heart, he wants to help people. Yes, he is vain, he is cocky, he is arrogant, but he does want to help people. He does, he became a doctor to help people. He believes that he can help people with his scalpel, and later he will help people with his magic. And it is that desire to help that makes him worthy of being the Sorcerer Supreme. Even though Baron Mordo technically was the better trained, he did his, he worked his way up as a sorcerer. He knows more. He's more willing to use his magic in more creative ways, but he cannot be the Sorcerer Supreme, especially because he doesn't want, because Baron Mordo wants to be Sorcerer Supreme because he wants it, and he doesn't know to want anything else. Doctor Strange doesn't want to be Sorcerer Supreme, and that is why he is the better man to be Sorcerer Supreme. And, that is what is excellent about the Baron Mordo Doctor Strange dynamic, because one is a person who, trained all his life for something, but never really thought about what that power really meant, He wanted the crown, but never thought about how heavy the head is that should wear it. And, you have a great dichotomy with Loki in that. In the same way that Loki, he just wants to rule, not because he wants to be a good king, but just because he wants to be the king. He wants to be the king only to be the king. And Baron Mordo wants to be Sorcerer Supreme only to be Sorcerer Supreme. He doesn't care what he has to do to get it. He doesn't care what happens when he is it. He just wants to be Sorcerer Supreme. And you can't have someone who doesn't understand the reason why the Sorcerer Supreme must defend the universe. You have to want to save a life, a single human life, before you can save the universe.
He just wants the title.
He just wants the title. And he doesn't care if he has to kill everyone on the planet to get it. And, heck, he's dealing with Dormammu to try and usurp the Ancient One, even though he knows that means Dormammu will come into our universe. But he doesn't care. He doesn't care if Dormammu is going to try and muscle in on his domain. He just wants the title and the power, and is probably arrogant enough to think, I could defeat Dormammu if I had to, And, and the cosmos is littered with Sorcerer Supremes who thought I could defeat Dormammu if I had to, when they're trying to scratch their way to the top of the Sorcerer Supreme pile there. So I'm really excited about Doctor Strange. I think that is going to be one of the really great central pieces of the new Marvel Cinematic Universe. I can't wait to see that. I can't wait to see how that's going to integrate into Defenders, and very excited about it. Also interesting, speaking of recent rumors, it turns out I was reading up on the new Jessica Jones series, of which Patsy Walker is going to be a character. Huh. And they seem to have picked up on the same vibe I had about how you approach Patsy Walker in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that is to make her a former child star. And I don't know if they're going to have her becoming a superhero in this, but I like the idea of a former child star sort of seeing that the wave of superheroes is coming and trying to get in on it, because she wants to get back into that limelight, wants to get back into the conventions now that no one cares about Disney princesses anymore. Everyone wants to be a superhero. So I was very happy to read that recently. That's the rumor that's how they're approaching Patsy Walker in the Jessica Jones series. So That should be fun.
So Hellcat then?
Well, we don't know. They haven't said there's going to be Hellcat yet. They just said that there's going to be Patsy Walker, and that in their description of the character is that she's a former child star. Now, for those who don't remember, Patsy Walker was actually one of the first books to actually bear the Marvel imprint. Patsy Walker, when she was a teen model character, and Patsy Walker had, kind of as a bit of a joke, Stanley and Jack Kirby had Patsy and Hetty, who were the sort of the Betty and Veronica of the Marvel universe, show up a couple times in the Fantastic Four. And years later, I'm trying to remember who the writer was on it. Was it Grunwald or was it? I can't remember. But the person who came up with the idea of Hellcat had basically had seen those when he was a kid reading Marvel Comics and thought, oh man, isn't that great that they had Patsy Walker integrate into this interconnected Marvel universe, and decided to bring her into it. And then that they had this idea that basically she was this teen celebrity. Her mother had written these stories about her adventures as Patsy Walker, teen model, and her little soap opera books. And actually, for what it's worth, Patsy Walker's books actually had a tremendous staying power. They actually ran from the 40s into the 70s. There actually was a Patsy, I believe, until the very early 70s, or at least the late 60s. Patsy Walker or Patsy and Hetty were published books for a while for Marvel, and it's pretty impressive, And it's great that when they built up this Marvel superhero universe, they decided to bring in this classic character from Marvel's early days. In fact, I think she's the only character to be published continuously by Timely, Atlas, and Marvel. Because I believe she started with Timely, then went to Atlas when it changed to Atlas, so she was published under Atlas and published under Marvel. So, way to go, Patsy Walker. I'm glad you're getting your due in the MCU, and I can't wait for your Netflix series, Patsy Walker Hellcat. Because once we have Doctor Strange, we can slip in Damian Hailstorm. Marvel's own Constantine. Who was there before Constantine, man? Constantine is just a Damian Hailstorm ripoff. And that show's not going to be canceled after one season, let me tell you. Ooh. Ooh, take that, Constantine. Oh, no. Actually, I like Constantine. I watched it a couple times. It's a fun series. It just, You know what the problem with Constantine was? They didn't connect it to the rest of the DC television universe.
That's right.
I mean, that is what is great about Flash and Arrow, and now the Legends of Tomorrow, is that, it's connected. We've got this built-out universe that we can, move through and follow through, and it's going to be fun to watch. Even if you don't like Arrow, as some people don't, you can really like Flash, as many people do. And that's what's great. And it's really sad that DC just keeps it fractured like that. That there's going to be a completely different Flash when we get to the cinematic Flash. And I mean, it's fine for them to do it. Marvel can do both their 616 and their Ultimate Universes, but I think in the cinema it might be. I don't think it's going to hurt them, because I think the people that show up for a Flash TV show are going to show up for a Flash movie just the same. Mm-hmm. But I think that they'd have a stronger connection to their base if they were connected. As I've said, I really want to see. I really want to see Bullock and Gordon in old man makeup show up at some point in the Flash. I just think that would be really awesome. This is a Marvel podcast, so what else is going on in the Marvel universe?
What about the other casting news?
I'm
sorry? Daredevil news for season 2? Did you see we're getting the Punisher?
We got Frank Castle in Daredevil.
Jon Bernthal from The Walking Dead.
Yes. I've never seen The Walking Dead, but I hear good things. Of course, I heard good things about Arrow, too.
Yeah, he was on the first 2 seasons, That's very good casting.
Yes. Well, that's going to be awesome, and it's going to be great to see that dichotomy between Frank Castle and Daredevil, because of course that I think is one of the great superheroic rivalries in the Marvel universe. I mean, really, I think in comic books. I don't think because at their core they have similar approaches to things, but then there is that line that separates them, and that's what I love about that Daredevil Punisher dichotomy. Because yes, we're both the dark specters of Hell's Kitchen, but there's a line I won't cross, and you don't mind crossing that line because to Daredevil, Daredevil knows that everybody is somebody's dad, and that's kind of how I like to think about Daredevil is, his dad was on the take, and his dad had thrown fights. His dad worked for somebody. In some stories it has been Fisk himself, and in many variations on the story, but he knows his dad was one of these guys, whether or not he was really an enforcer, as they did in the movie, or whether he was just, a guy on the take who took dives because he was corrupt, because he lived in a corrupt world. That's another way to look at it too. But he knows that was his dad. And I think that's why Daredevil doesn't kill, because no matter what that guy he's fighting does or did, he knows there's somebody at his home who is waiting for him to come home. And to give you that counterpoint with Frank Castle has no one waiting for him anymore. And that's why Frank Castle doesn't care if you don't have if your kid cries himself to sleep tonight. Because if he's crying himself to sleep tonight, so is your kid. And that makes Frank Castle a bit of a jerk. But, yeah, Marvel Comics is full of jerks, let's face it. Don't even get me started on that bomb-throwing lunatic Reed Richards. But,
I've heard a lot of people this week jumping on that Reed Richards bandwagon.
Yeah, well, not for nothing. And I'm going to be honest, I actually like Reed Richards as a character. He was one of my idols as a young boy. I used to want to be a physicist because I wanted to be Reed Richards. And then I realized I could just write about physics. I could just write about superheroes instead, and I didn't actually have to become a scientist and have a tragic lab accident to become one. Also, I found out when I studied physics that, it's actually really difficult to become a superhero through a tragic lab accident. Doesn't happen as much as they make you think in the comic books, let me tell you, kids.
But no, I heard an argument today. They were saying, what an idiot Reed Richards is, because it was like, okay, think of Fantastic Four #1. Okay, he goes up into space with his old college roommate, who's a pilot. Okay, you can see that. But he takes up his girlfriend and her kid brother. I mean, come on. He was asking for trouble.
Yeah. Oh, well, of course. But, Reed doesn't think things through. It's like Captain America said, man. The smart guys in the room, they don't think as deeply as they like to think they think. And that's the thing with Doom right now on Secret Wars Battleworld, is that he's not thinking as deeply as he thinks he thinks. He thinks he's thinking, 12 steps ahead of everyone, where in truth, he's only thinking, past next Wednesday, at best, Because that's what, honestly, if Doom had been smart, he would have made all of Battleworld a bunch of Latverias and just ruled over a planet of Latverias as king in a nutshell, as Hamlet might say,
superheroes.
Well, exactly, But no, it's not good enough, because he knows the superhero, and that's the thing. He knows the multiverse still exists. He knows he's not really a god. He knows it's all a lie. And so just having all of that wouldn't have been enough. He has to control them too. He has to control the people that he sees as beneath him. And it's not enough to just rule Latveria. It's not enough to have one country of sycophantic followers. he needs to bring every superhero who's ever faced him to their knees and have them pay tribute to him. And every supervillain, too, because he's bigger and stronger than every supervillain. And look at me, I am Dr. Doom, I am the strongest one there is. And, you know, that is, and you know, it's funny, because on Hickman's run, when he was doing Fantastic Four, he actually had another time where Dr. Doom, he had an Infinity Gauntlet. He was in the Pocket Universe, and he took the Infinity Gauntlet, and he made his own universe, and he built it just as he wanted, with much like this, with the balance between science and sorcery. And you know what happened? The beings he had created basically said, Doom, you're a jerk, and we're throwing you out of your own universe. And that's what happened, because Doom created something, and that something, because he let it exist, didn't want to be his perfect little frozen in amber universe just the way he wanted it, and so he lost it, and that's what's happening with Battleworld, is things aren't going to remain, because it's not enough for Doom to have sycophants. He needs to have everyone accept that he's not a jerk, but he is a jerk. And that's why he's never going to succeed. Because at the end of the day, because if you think about it, the one time Dr. Doom really conquered the world was when he harnessed the power of the Purple Man in the Emperor Doom graphic novel storyline. And that's what it was everyone is just controlled by the Purple Man and obedient to Doom, and it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for Doom. And that's why he eventually loses, because it's not enough to just be the ruler. He has to have everyone accept him as the ruler. And, you know, it actually has a nice parallel in the Secret Wars #2 comic book, when we actually, and I think it was issue 2, we get Frank from Bayonne, when the Beyonder basically takes over the entire universe, because, you know, he starts off as just this guy, then he meets a mobster, and the mobster basically sets him up, and then he becomes the head of organized crime in New York City, then he becomes head of the entire country, then the head of the world, and then he eventually has every microbe and atom in the universe bowing to him and giving fealty to him. And then he realizes that without humanity having a spark of its own independence, there's no point in ruling it. And there's no point in power unless, you know, you're accepted for not being a jerk. And that was the great philosophical evolution of the Beyonder there, as he's trying to find his way. Doom has never yet found his way, because at the end of the day, Doom will not accept that he isn't as good as he thinks he is, even though he knows darn well he's not as good as he thinks he is. Doom is a very sad, petty man.
Well, yeah, his ego will bring him down every time.
Well, exactly, and that's what it's done here, because, you know, all the things that Doom, and I know there's going to be a scene in here where when Richards confronts Doom, and Doom is like, oh, I am a god here, you are nothing to me, Richards, now. And he's just going to look at him, and he's going to say, where's Latveria, Doom? Where are the people that your whole life you said you live only to serve and protect? Where are they now? You didn't bring them with you, did you? Because that wasn't what was important. You didn't want to save your people. You wanted to make everyone else suffer under your heel. And that's going to be his ending. It's sort of like in the, was it Superman Red Sun, where like the Russian Superman's about to conquer America, and Lex Luthor hands him a note that says, why don't you just put the whole world in a bottle, Superman? And Superman's like, oh, cut me to the quick, and walks away from conquering the world, because, you know, he realizes that, you know, yes, he could rule the whole world, but what would that mean to be this, you know, dictator holding the whole world by force? And that's not what he wanted to be. He wanted to be a hero. And Doom wants to be a hero, but doesn't know how to be a hero, because he's not a hero, because he is the villain of the piece. Anyway, wow, that's a lot. But you know, I mean, that's what it is. One thing I did want to go into, I've actually wanted to mention this for a while now, and I keep on forgetting to bring it up. which is one of the great mysteries of the old 616 that was left unresolved. And my theory as to what it was, which was, what did Nick Fury whisper to Thor to make him feel unworthy? And I think I figured out what that was. Do you want to hear my theory?
Yes, tell me.
Loki is the rightful ruler of Asgard. And I have two theories on how this is. One, that Loki is the actual son of Odin. Was actually the firstborn son of Odin. That Odin basically slept with Loki's wife, as omnipotent godlike beings do in ancient mythos. And that's why Loki is so small. Because Loki is actually part Asgardian and is Odin's son. And we know from Norse myth, because Thor actually married a frost giant in some Norse myths, that yes, frost giants and Asgardians actually did, jump the woodpile, as they say all the time. And so that's one theory, is that Loki is the firstborn son of Odin, and so he is the rightful ruler of Asgard the whole time, and that's why Odin adopts him. The other theory is that he is actually that Loki is the rightful ruler of Asgard because he is Freya's one true son. Because Thor, even though Thor refers to Freya as his mother, Freya is not Thor's mother. Thor's mother is Gaia in the Marvel universe. Now, granted, Gaia and Freya are actually the same kind of character. They're basically the Earth Mother character in the mythos. But when they created the origins of Thor, they had his mother as Gaia, the elder god Gaia, which is why Thor is so powerful. And Odin created Thor with Gaia in the way that gods do, which, goodness, it's different for gods. We know that from Ares and his horse children. And Loki and his wolf and serpent children. It's different for gods. And because Thor is not the true son of Freya, perhaps Loki is the true worthy ruler of Asgard through Freya, through the queenly line. I think that is what prevented Loki from made Thor drop the hammer, because he realized he was not who he thought he was. That the truth was Loki actually had a greater claim to be the ruler than he did, and that Loki's hidden lineage is what is made Thor realize he was unworthy to wield the hammer, because he had fought Loki for so long, and Loki had become twisted by the fact that everyone had lied to him his whole life. And rather than take a moment to speak about it with Loki to find out, how we can find peace with Loki, he just fought him, and as such, he is unworthy. And I think that's what will eventually be revealed as the secret that made Thor drop the hammer. Because Thor is not really unworthy. Thor is only unworthy because Thor says he's unworthy. I'm certain that Thor could still pick up the hammer at any time, but that he won't let himself. That when he goes to lift the hammer, he tells himself he's unworthy, and that's why he can't lift it. And, yeah, it'll only be when he is honest with Loki about what it was that made him drop the hammer, that he's going to be able to lift it again. Which doesn't come anytime soon. I'm sorry?
I was thinking that too. That maybe it's a mental block and not actually he lost worthiness. So you think it's a big plot by Odin then? Maybe he was afraid Loki was like... Well, no, I mean the whole Loki thing, hiding his heritage. Maybe he was afraid Loki would be able to take the throne from him too easily because he was too smart. But he wanted Thor as his rightful heir because he's like, this kid's not so smart.
Well, I think what it is Thor... Well, so if you think about Thor, Odin lying with Gaia, the elder goddess, to make the most powerful son possible, which is Thor. Well, there's two possibilities here. One is that, and this is why I think that maybe that Freya had an affair with Laufey, and that, because we never hear about Laufey's wife. We just know that Loki is Laufey's son, and that he was small. And it makes me wonder if, Odin's ill treatment of Loki perhaps derives from the fact that, Freya cuckolded Odin in the way that Odin has cuckolded Freya so many times. And notably with Gaia to create Thor, that in the soap opera of Asgard, this is, it gets, and really what that really might even suggest is that Thor has no greater claim on the throne of Asgard than Loki. And that if Loki is older and is the true son of, and the only true son of Freya, that maybe he has that authority more than Odin or than Thor, who is the bastard son of Odin, as it were, because from a union with someone other than Freya. So, although Thor, of course, Loki obviously then is also the bastard son of Freya. So, it's a soap opera, but I think that's what it's going to come down to. Something about that Loki-Thor relationship, and that Thor came to his birthright in a less than honorable way, and that's why he feels he is unworthy of the hammer. And we'll have to see what happens.
Thor's going to turn out to be Prince Harry?
Prince Harry?
From the English royal family?
Oh, I don't know. You have nerd stumped me. I'm not up on my royals, so.
He's the second oldest. He's the second oldest son, so he's never going to get the throne.
Prince Charles. Well, yeah, I mean, to except of course they were all from the same family, They were all Charles and Diana's kids. But essentially Thor would be the second in line to the throne. Now, you can make an argument there that actually the line would follow Odin, not Freya, because it's a very patriarchal society, Asgard. But under Asgardia, then maybe really Loki is the true heir to Asgardia's throne. I don't know, however you want to slice it. And I think that Thor is probably looking at it in that more complex way. And basically just feels that he has wronged Loki. And, and at that same time not knowing quite how to deal with who Loki became, because at the end of the day, Loki is still has come through his reincarnations over the past, since Siege, there's more to Loki than meets the eye, and I think that has a lot to do with it too. So it's an interesting question, and again, it goes into that, that question of, Thor and Loki just wanting to be king because he feels like he is entitled to it, Thor maybe coming, and of course, I always thought it would be a great what if story. Not that they do what if anymore. I always thought it would have been great if Loki had been punished for his hubris and turned into Don Blake instead of Thor, and if that universe had been explored, if Loki had been the one who had been cast down to Earth in the reverse apotheosis into human form, to live and to learn how to be good and human, and how his story might have been different. And and maybe that goes into it too, that the only reason Thor is worthy is because he got a punishment that Loki didn't, that Thor was given the chance to learn to be human, and maybe if Loki had been given that chance, and which maybe Loki has in his reincarnations now come to understand that idea that, that there is more to me than me. I don't know. It's all very fascinating. Anyway, I think that's been a really good SuperConnectivity this week. I think we've connected a lot of things. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think all you need to say on that Thor theory is mark my words.
Yeah, mark my word. I will mark my words on that. That is that when it eventually gets revealed, if it ever gets revealed, that is going to be why Thor dropped the hammer, because he found out that Loki's story was different than he had thought, and that Loki had a greater claim to the throne of Asgard than Thor thought. That Thor basically is the usurper, not Loki, and that is why when Loki did have his inversion, he was able to lift the hammer, and he was worthy. Loki was worthy for one brief moment. He was worthy, and And that is the truth of it.
Mark his words.
Mark my words. Loki is worthy. Loki is the true heir of Asgard. And that is going to be the next big Thor arc in the comics when they actually get around to it. When they actually get around to saying why Thor lost his hammer, it's because he realized Loki was the true heir to the throne of Asgard. So, mark my words. Okay, that has been SuperConnectivity this week, ladies and gentlemen. Tune in next week when we're going to talk about all sorts of new things about the MCU and the Marvel Comics and Secret Wars and all the people who are jerks in comic books. Where can they find you if they want to talk to you, Phil?
Well, they can email me at nightwingpdp@gmail.com, and I'm on Twitter at nightwingpdp.
And, of course, you can email me at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at Charlie&rsquo. And like our Facebook page, as always. And tune in to the all-new Marvel Roundup, where you can hear me and Phil talk about just comics, nothing else. Just the latest Marvel comics and our crazy theories about what's going on Battleworld and in the Marvel Universe in general. Okay, folks. See you next week. We'll connect with you again.